you that there will be a recording of this session. So we're going to have a little bit less than an hour together. So if you need to go back and review anything that we're going over today, or you find something really useful and you want to encourage your other teacher or educator friends to check it out, please encourage them to look at the recording, because hopefully we're going to be covering a lot of really useful things that you can use in your classroom. So I'll introduce myself in just a moment. I want to go over a few logistical details to make sure that we have everything we have to be successful today and moving forward. So I've dropped a link to our agenda in the chat, and I know that this is also available on your school district interactive agenda that you have today as well. But I wanted to show you the specific agenda created for this session, because I think there are some really useful tools in here that you might want to come back and visit. So our session today is going to be all about Lumio, which is our online lesson presentation software. And so all of these resources that are linked here in blue are going to be specific to creating and presenting in Lumio. And so these will take you to videos directly about whatever feature or tool is mentioned. Now, if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, this is similar to my sessions this morning if you were with me this morning. I also have a resource bank available for you down here, including a copy of today's presentation file. So if you like anything in the presentation today and you want to save a copy, or you simply need to go back and review anything from the presentation today, you have a copy of that file right there already, as well as access to a really great page that'll help you learn about how to use Lumio and how to get started, and then even level up in Lumio when you're ready. Now, another shout out here, we do have live and recorded webinars, so please feel free to check out our webinar listings. And if you can't attend one live, you can still sign up and receive a recording of that webinar. And we have webinars about every grade level content, Lumio and the Smartboard, whatever you might need. So I really encourage you to check those out. And you can also get professional learning hours at the end of the webinar. There is a certificate that you can print out to prove your hours. Now, the last resource that I want to draw your attention to is my email address. So I know that you have a really awesome tech team in your district that is going to be able to answer a lot of your questions. But if you ever have any wonderings, or something's just not working how it should be and you want to reach out, please know that my email inbox is open to you at any point after today. So my support does not end for you today. Just let me know if you need anything. So I would recommend going to File and either making a copy or downloading a copy of this agenda if you want to come back to these resources. But again, I know you have an interactive agenda that has these linked as well. I think they're really helpful for teachers. And they're all going to be, any of the videos are going to be 3 minutes or less when we're looking at those Lumio videos, because we want to save you time and really get your questions answered. So these Lumio resources are really awesome and made for teachers to save you time. Okay, now that we have got that all squared away, I want to go ahead and come back to my session over here. And I want to take a moment to introduce myself to those who I haven't interacted with yet today. My name is Sarah Merritt McCoy, and I'm a professional development specialist with Smart Technologies. Now, my background is as a classroom teacher and school administrator for several years before transitioning to Smart as a PD specialist. And so my professional development is actually based in education, pedagogy, and theory. And so whenever I'm delivering a session, I'm going to give you tips, strategies, and tricks for how to actually use Lumio in your classroom realistically every day. I know that there's a lot of different tools that you can use out there. So I really hope to show you today how Lumio can save you time, really streamline your process, and just make your presentations a lot more seamless and less in transition time in your classroom. Now, my email is again here for you one more time, as well as my Smart Twitter if you want to give a follow for any Lumio tips and tricks. And I have shared this a few times already. I'm joining you from Houston, Texas today, so you might recognize a little bit of an accent or a y'all slip out here and there. So really excited to be here with you all today, and let's go ahead and jump in. I would love to give you an opportunity to join my online lesson. Now, in Lumio, you can offer your students to join any of your lessons as well if you want them to interact or participate in the activities. So, if you're in a position where you can both look at the Google Meet screen and join my online lesson, I'm going to encourage you to split your screen, or if you have two screens, use your two screens and have our Google Meet on one side of the screen and have my online lesson and the other side of the screen so you can interact in Lumio and kind of see what tools and features are available for you there. So I'm going to invite you to join my online lesson, and you can do so by following these three steps. So you can open up another tab in your computer and you can go to hellosmart.com, click join as a guest, and enter in my class ID. Or I'm going to drop in a direct link, I hit the wrong button, pardon me. I'm going to drop in a direct link into the Google Meet chat. If it's easier for you to just click that link in the Google Meet chat, go ahead and click that. So whether you're clicking that link in the chat or following the directions that I have shared on the Google Meet screen, it's going to bring you to the same exact spot. So I'll go ahead and pause here and give you an opportunity to connect if you want to. Wonderful. Now, while people are still joining, I'll go ahead and mention you should be, you'll know you're at the right screen when whatever I am projecting on the Google Meet is also showing up on your Lumio lesson. And yes, John says, does anyone know if this is integrated with Google Sign-In for students? Yes, it is integrated with Google Sign-In. So for today, if you've joined me, you might have clicked join as a guest because I'm inviting you as a guest into my class. But for your students, when they sign in, they'll click the sign in where it says welcome students, and that's where the Google integration comes in. So they'll use Google and whatever email they have assigned to them by the district. So your students can follow these same steps that I have listed on the screen in order to join your class, or you can drop a direct link just like I've done. So I've gone over here. You see where the number 11 is on my screen. This is our classroom management. So this is a little student icon right here, and it's telling me that I have 11 students currently in my class. So when I select that icon, I can see who those students are. I can change the lesson pacing mode. So right now you're in teacher pacing mode. Anytime I move the page, it's going to move your page along. Or I could put you in student pacing mode if I wanted you to work independently or asynchronously. But you'll also notice up here at the top where my name is, it says class ID. When I hover over it, it's blue, which means that's a hyperlink. So when I click this, it also pops out a box with additional ways that my students can connect. So when we look at the right-hand side, that's very similar to what I just showed you on my screen. They go to Hello Smart and enter in a class ID. Or if they have a tablet or a device with the camera, they can join with the QR code. Or I could copy this direct link and I could drop this into Google Classroom or Seesaw or whatever learning management system I'm using. So there's three different ways you can get your students connected to the activities in your lesson to really give you that flexibility. Got it. So that is right there in that classroom management tab. And we're going to come back and look at that in a little bit more depth later. But I want to learn a little bit about you all before we really get into the nitty gritty. So first, let me go ahead and tell you a little bit about our goals for the day, and then I'll learn about who's on the call with us here. Today, we're going to learn how to utilize Lumio to create interactive lessons for your students. Then you're going to experience the interactivity that's available in Lumio. We're going to begin where you're going to see the student perspective. So right now, you are a student in my class and experiencing what your students might see. Then about halfway through, we're going to switch to the teacher perspective and actually get into Lumio, start building, and see what it's like to use it. And the entire time that we're working, I want you to reflect on your own classroom, your own students, and your own teaching style. And think about how you will engage students through Lumio. I'm going to show you a sample lesson today and some sample activities. They might not be your content. So, for instance, I'm showing math examples today. You might not teach math. So, I don't want you to get caught up on, oh, it's a math example. This doesn't apply to me. Instead, think about you and how would you use a similar activity for your content and your students. So that's going to be my challenge for you today is to identify 1 to 3 new tools that you can use in Lumio to engage your students. So I'm going to begin with a feature called Shout It Out. And for a Shout It Out, it's going to allow you to shout out your responses from your device. So I'm going to click Start for Class. And on my shared Google Meet screen, you see our question. So the question's not going to show up on my online lesson. You have to look at my Google Meet screen. And it says, what grade and subject do you teach? If you don't teach, tell me what grade and subject you might support. And what is one goal you have for today's session? So if you're one of the people that have joined my lesson, you'll notice there's a text box that's going to appear on your screen for you to answer this question. What grade and subject do you teach? What is one goal you have for today? You can type up your response and hit submit, and we'll see all of the students' responses start to load on the screen in just a moment. Wonderful. We've got a fifth grade teacher looking for new ideas. Came to the right spot. Good. How is this different from Pear Deck and how can it support engagement? Awesome. So if you're familiar with tools like Pear Deck, I want you to start to see some of the similar tools that you might be able to leverage in Lumio as well. That's a great idea. Awesome. I love that we have an educational assistant finding ways to support students in their flex group. That's really great because Lumio can support synchronous learning if you have the whole class learning at one time, or asynchronous learning if you have a group of students that need to break out into a group and maybe work with a pull out or a push out group. That's awesome. Good. We have a fourth grade teacher saying, I want a lesson set up to use this week. That is the perfect segue. I'm going to show you a sample lesson with ideas that you might leverage. So this is a tool called Shout It Out. It is one of the features in Lumio. So like I said, students can silently shout out from their device, and it's going to show up on our whole screen device. And whether you have a smart board or not, you can project this up on whatever projection device you have. So it doesn't matter what model smart boards you have. If it is something that can be pulled up in a browser, you can open it up on your smart board. So I'll talk more about that in a second as well. But what I love about the Shout It Out is I like to use this at the beginning of class to maybe get students thinking about a topic, or at the end of class, I can ask them, hey, what questions do you still have about our lesson? And it's going to populate all of my students' responses in one area so I can see patterns. And I can take any student responses and I can group them into any like patterns. This is why I love ending my lesson with the simple question of what questions do you have about blank, whatever topic we might be talking about. Because once students input their answers, I can group them into like questions. So if all of my students are asking the same type of question over here in this corner, okay, I know that's a question that I need to answer a whole group or talk about with my students. Now, when students input material into your Shout It Out, it's going to save to your Shout It Out until you come over to the side here where this little arrow is that I'm showing you on the Google screen, and I can reset the activity. So if I wanted to use this with another class, I could click this and quickly clear out. Or if I want my class's work to be saved in the Shout It Out, if I don't click that button, it's going to automatically save it. And so if I'm asking my students, hey, what questions do you have at the end of class? That evening or that afternoon, when I am reviewing, I can go back into this activity and see what questions my students had. So I love that ability. Now, when I'm debriefing this whole class, like let's say the next day, I pull this back up and I say, hey guys, here was all the questions you had after yesterday's class. I can go in and I can tap or select an individual response and enlarge it to discuss whole screen. So if I'm going over those questions, I can select one and be like, here is our most asked question. Let's turn and talk to the people around us and talk about what we think the right answer might be, or whatever your content or whatever activity you're doing. I can use these arrows to toggle through different responses, or when I'm done, just exit out there at the top. Now you'll notice too that it has the first three letters of my participants' names. So if I go over here to this little settings wheel in my shout it out, I can see who each of those students are, how many times they've contributed, and I can even turn off the display names here if maybe I'm asking a sensitive question and I don't want my students to be embarrassed, or maybe I have a shy group. Or if I'm asking, hey, what questions do you have at the end of a lesson? I typically turn off the names. So when students look at it whole group, they don't know who's put this response or asked this question. However, on my teacher side of things, I can always go back to this setting wheel and still see who all of the students are and turn names back on if I need to see who's put what answer up. So that's something that's flexible for you there. So if a shout it out is something that you could see using in your class, I want you to remember that, because when we get into Lumio, you might want to use a minute to explore something like a shout it out. Okay, next, I kind of want to see where everyone is at in their Lumio journey. So you have access to an activity on your screen if you joined my lesson. You might have to click start or resume. And what I'd love for you to do for this activity is I want you to choose whatever color car you want here in the bottom right-hand corner. And I want you to drag that car to the indicator that best describes your Lumio proficiency. And as you start to drag your car, notice that there's going to be other cars moving and appearing on your screen. That's because this is a whole class whiteboard activity. And I'll talk more about that in a moment after you've had time to move your cars. Wonderful. It looks like there's a bit of a slowdown in the movement. So I'll tell you a little bit about a whole class whiteboard. So this is where I'm inviting the whole class to all participate and interact on my canvas or on my whiteboard. And so I can quickly capture patterns or trends from the whole class. Now, what I love about Lumio is I can turn any page into an interactive page. And so, for instance, this page that you see here, I actually created in Google Slides. So I created a slide, put my background and my picture and my text, and then I was able to pull that slide in and make it interactive for my students. And so in a whole class whiteboard, you can use material that you already have, you can make it interactive, and you can just change up the way that you want your students to indicate their learning. Now for this one, I had you just drag material. But notice on the left-hand side that you actually have access to a whole toolbar. So depending on what your activity is or what grade your students have, you might have them just drag something like I've done here, or you might have them grab the pen feature and maybe they're drawing something. Or maybe they've selected the A feature and they can add a text box to something. So notice when I've made a page interactive, my students have a whole host of different tools there so I can determine and scaffold how I want them to interact. But if while my students are interacting, they grab this pen and they start just drawing all over the page, or they're dropping in different pictures and text box, and they're not paying attention or following directions. At any point during a whole class whiteboard, there's an everyone can edit button that I can toggle. Watch what happens to the tools on your left-hand side when I hit this button. On the student's end, those tools go away, and now this page is view only for students. So I can turn off the interactivity and maybe reset expectations, or maybe I'm giving instructions or taking a little break, whatever it might be. And then when I'm ready to, I can toggle that back on, and my students' tools will appear along the left-hand side again. So that is a management tool that you have available for you in a whole class whiteboard. And if you're wondering, okay, great, how did she make all of this? Don't worry, I'm going to show you how to make all of this stuff in just a few minutes. I just want to show you some examples of things that you could leverage and use in Lumio, especially because it looks like we have some novice users here. Okay, so let me tell you all the things that Lumio can do. I've just showed you a few so far. But in this box, or pardon me, in these 12 boxes, lists all of the different features and tools that are available in Lumio. I'm going to give you about 30 seconds now, and I want to give you time to just read through all 12 of those boxes. And I want you to identify in your head one or two features that you're most excited to explore today. Once you've identified the one or two tools that you're most excited to use, I want you to come over to this firefly right underneath my question mark. And I want you to drag the firefly to the one or two tools that you're committed to exploring either today or sometime this week. Awesome. Looks like we definitely have some love for that immersive reader and the content you already have. So this is where I'll give you a quick little overview about Lumio for my novice users who maybe haven't used it yet. So you might be like, okay, she's showing me all of these things, but I still don't understand what Lumio is. Lumio is a browser-based presentation tool. And so that means you don't have to download anything on your computer to use Lumio. You can use any device that can go to a web address. So if it has Wi-Fi and can navigate to a web address, you can use Lumio. That means you can use it on your smartboard. You can go to your smartboard, click the browser app on your smartboard, and pull up Lumio. Or you can access it on your computer, a tablet, a phone, anything that has Wi-Fi and a browser. You can go to Lumio, and once you get into Lumio, you can create lessons that you can share with your students. Now, our biggest thing is saving teachers time, because I know that's the number one resource as a teacher that you are the shortest on. And so when we're using Lumio, we're not asking you to start from scratch. We're not asking you to scrap all of the great content you've already built. The beauty of Lumio is that it will let you import files that you already have. So if you already have PDFs, Google Slides, Smart Notebook files, if you've used Smart Notebook before, if you have any of these old files that you've used for years and years and years, you can still use them and they will import into Lumio with the click of a button. That way you're not creating anything from scratch. Then once you pull in your old material, like your old Google Slides, you can then level it up by adding maybe one game, or maybe you add a YouTube video. That way you're not building an entire lesson from the very beginning. Another reason why you might use Lumio is that it'll let you combine different media types. So when you think about a PowerPoint, for instance, each slide is a PowerPoint media file. But in Lumio, you can combine. So I can have two PowerPoint slides, followed by a Google slide, followed by a PDF, followed by a YouTube video. And I can combine all of these different media types into one presentation. That way, it's going to lessen your transition time between activities and classes because you don't have to open up a whole bunch of tabs. You don't have to go to a whole bunch of different applications. Lumio will streamline it all into one presentation. And so when you click over, when you look at the page navigator in the bottom left-hand corner on your teacher view, when I click that, it streamlines everything into one presentation, regardless of if it's a PowerPoint, PDF, Google Slides, Smart Notebook, whatever. Puts it all in one spot. And then after you've added a game or an exit ticket, you can share your whole lesson with students or with other teachers. So it's super useful. Now, one thing that I'm going to touch on just really quickly is this immersive reader, and that's because it looks like we've got four little fireflies over here. So Lumio is fantastic because you can activate the immersive reader and anything that is a text box in Lumio. So for instance, if you're looking at the Google Meet screen, I'm selecting right now all of my little text box here. So if I have any text box added into Lumio, during presentation mode, I can teach my students this little icon right here that has the book and the speaker. That's immersive reader. And so it will read that text aloud to students that need that accommodation. So this is something that you can teach students to click. And when they click that immersive reader, it's going to draw a blue box around every text box, and it has a little icon right above it. When students select that icon, in the same tab, what it's going to do is it's going to open the immersive reader. See, there we go. And then students can hit play and have this text read aloud to them. And in the top right-hand corner, there's a whole host of different settings that they can adjust there, including the size, the color, and even the language that is being read to them. When they're done having this read aloud to them and they hit the back button here, it's going to take them exactly wherever you have left off in your Lumio presentation. So again, it's going to keep students in line and lessen that transition as well. So that's my quick little piece on immersive reader. So now what I'd love to do is I'm going to just quickly, yes, Rebecca says if students use Google Read and Write, that will still work if that is a tool that you use. Yep. Now I'm going to share you just a quick sample lesson of how you might use Lumio from the beginning to the end of your lesson. Now you might be tempted to go through and complete all the activities that I'm about to show you, and I'm going to go through this part quickly just because I want to get into the creation mode to where you can actually create activities like this. So if you really wanted to play the game and I moved too fast, I apologize in advance. But here's a quick sample lesson for middle school math that you might be able to use in Lumio. Even if you teach English, science, history, or others, still think about how you could use similar tools in your content. So to begin, I might start with an intro page. And this intro page I actually created in Google Slides. Now remember, I can pull in slides and PDFs and everything that I already have. So I had made this in Google Slides and I easily pulled it into Lumio and I didn't have to move or create any or edit anything on it. After I do my intro slide, to start my lesson, I might say, I want to show my students a quick video to preview the content that we're going over today. So when I click into my next arrow, it's going to go immediately into my YouTube video that I want students to look at. And if I have this on my whole class display, I can just hit play from my display and show it whole class. Or if I want my students to do this independently or asynchronously for homework, they'll be able to play it on their own on their end. Now, a few reasons why you might use the Lumio YouTube feature is when you look at my pages, look, it went directly into the video. I did not have to have another tab open here with YouTube that I accidentally click out of or have to refresh. It goes straight into it during my presentation. Another thing is whenever you use YouTube inside of Lumio, your videos will be 100% ad-free and comment-free. I'll say that again, 0 ads when you use this Lumio YouTube feature. That way, when you hit play or when your students hit play at home, it goes straight into the content of your video and again, lessening those transition times. After my students watch the video, I might say, okay, I want them to do a little game. I want them to practice on a game to make sure that they're staying engaged and hooked to the topic. So I'm going to go ahead and go to my next page, and it jumps seamlessly into this game that I have created for students. And in this game, I have my students matching a solution and an answer, pardon me, a solution and an equation together. And so on the teacher end, I can model this activity for my students, or I can go straight to the dashboard because the games are going to collect data from your students. That way you can go back and see how students are doing. So when I click model activity here, I'll show you a copy of what this game looks like. This is our match 'em up game. We have 12 different game-based templates. This is just one of them. And in all of our game-based templates, just like in this one, you have the option to use text or pictures, depending on whatever your content or grade level is. When you upload a picture into any of the games, it's going to allow your students to zoom in. That's what that little blue box is. So when I click that blue box, it's going to zoom in so my students can see the question or picture that I have there. Now, one of the tricks that I have for saving time is these are all images that I actually had from an old handout. So I had an old handout where students just on with paper and pencil practiced these different equations. I took that handout that I had saved on my computer and I snipped little pictures of each of those equations and their answers. And then I could quickly put these pictures into a game. So now instead of using just a regular, math drill where my students are doing paper and pencil, they actually have this little interactive game that's going to give them immediate feedback. So when students get the answer wrong, it jumps back out to the side. But when students get the answer right, let's see if I can get it right. Nope, that one's wrong. When students get the answer right, it's going to show them right up here on the top. Now, as students are going along, this game is collecting data from students. So when I go to the View Progress button up here at the top, it's collecting my class overview. So if I show my class results, I'm able to see when my students are working on this, the average score, the average time it took on an activity. I love this. The 5 most incorrect questions. So this will give you very quick data when your students are doing your game to what you might need to review. And if I go to the student progress tab over here, it's going to show me how each individual student is performing. I could actually click into their name and see what questions they're struggling with. And the great thing is, if students practice it multiple times, like it gives them that instant feedback. So if students try an equation 3 times and then they get it right on the 4th time, it's going to show you all 3 wrong attempts before it then shows you the right attempt. So you'll still be able to get that really accurate data. So that is just one of our 12 games. And so I could start with an intro, play a video, and then go straight into a game. Now I see I have a question. I want to pause and answer this. Will videos that don't allow external playback allow playback with this feature? That's a great question. So the only videos that you can use actually embedded like this are YouTube videos. Now, if you have another website where you have students go and look at videos such as Number Rock, if that is on a different website, then you can insert an actual direct link to that specific video or that website. So I'll show you how to do that. And that'll be one that students will click and then it will open up in a new tab for them because the only ones that we integrate in are the YouTube videos. Some YouTube videos have to be played directly from YouTube. Okay, I'll show you what the YouTube feature looks like when we get into the teacher presentation area. So then maybe that'll answer your question. So we'll come back to that one. So after our YouTube video and a game, then I might follow up with a handout. And so in this handout, this is an individual handout. So the last couple interactions that you've done have been whole class whiteboards, where the whole class is working on one canvas. This one, however, is an individual handout. So now every single student is going to get their own individual copy of this handout. And so when they write on it, it's going to save their work and they're only going to see their work. And so when I click student progress here on my teacher end, I can see each of my students here, and I can click any of these students' name and actually see the work that they're doing on the handout. And like I said, your student's work is going to save in this file. So you can come back afterwards, 3 weeks later, and I could go click here and be like, what did John work on that one day? Or I could come down here where it says teacher handout. If I want to do a teacher model and I don't want to mark up one of my students' pages, I can click teacher handout and have a nice clean copy of this to model for my students or with a small group. Now, this is one of our pre-made graphic organizer. Lumio has 18 pre-made graphic organizers that you can personalize and add text or images to turn into a handout. So here I took one of our Frere models and I just added the text that I wanted. I actually got this equation from that one handout that I had just cut up for the game, and I plopped it in here in a graphic organizer for my students to walk me through their process for answering this question. And this is, like I said, using one of Lumio's pre-made features. Let's say you don't have enough time to cut up that handout, though. You're like, Sarah, that's great. I don't have enough time to cut up this handout and make a game, or I don't have enough time to type this all into a graphic organizer. That's okay. Remember that Lumio supports a lot of media types. So if you have an old handout or an old PDF, you can pull that into Lumio as it is. So when we look at this next page, this is actually a PDF of an old math handout that I used to print off and make 75 copies of for my students to practice these operations. Now I can cut out the printing and cut out the copying time, and I can import my digital handout directly into Lumio. And I can teach my students to use the tools along the left-hand side to show their work and answer these questions on their device. And so you might have students use the pen feature if they have touch on their computer and can write on it. Or you might teach them to select this A, that's the text box. Once they select that A text box, they can then go tap anywhere on the handout and they can answer the question that you had on the handout. And the beauty of this is, as students are working on this handout, you can still go through and see a copy and grade a copy after the fact without having to print off that handout. Is there an option for a fillable text box within the handout? There are some fill in the blank activities that you can set up. And then if you have younger students, you can also put in some pre-made text boxes as well. And so that's something that we'll do on the creation side. Yep. So in that lesson right there, I had my intro, I had a video, I had a game, and then I had two different practice opportunities. One with a pre-made Lumio graphic organizer and one with a handout that I've used in the past. And so as you can see, there are a lot of different ways that you can use Lumio. And so I'd love for you to practice using these tools yourself in our last student activity. I want you to grab this A, this little text box here, and I want you to choose whatever bubble you want to drop your answer in and just tell me about right now. Take some time to synthesize. What are some ways that you are thinking of using Lumio so far? Is there a specific topic or activity that you currently have on front of mind? Go ahead and let me know in this whole class whiteboard. Alternatively, if you're not in the whole class whiteboard, you can let me know in the Google Meet chat as well. Oh, good. A math teacher liked my math examples. That's high praise. Wonderful. And this is, like I said, another whole class whiteboard. And so, as students are working on any whole class whiteboard, you can click any of the student responses and drop down this arrow to see who is added. And so, while the individual handouts gave us each of those names as little tabs, you can still track individual student work in some of these whole group activities as well. Good. And I love that somebody's highlighted updating old Smart Notebook files. So, yes, if you've used Smart Notebook for years, Lumio will let you import those Smart Notebook files, and then maybe you're adding something new. Even if you just add or adjust one new thing, that could totally transform your lesson and make it more engaging for students. So, I love that you highlighted that. Okay, so now let's go ahead and jump into the teacher side of things so you can start actually making some of these lessons as well. So I'm going to ask you to leave my class. And to do so, you're going to follow these two steps. You're going to go to the horizontal three bars in the top left-hand corner. And when you click that, there is an option to leave my class. Now, while you're working with your students, there's going to be times when a student leaves to go to the doctor or forgets to leave your class. If that ever happens, if you're like at the end of first period and you see, oh, I still have a few students in my class, second period's about to start, I don't want them hanging around, you can select that student icon and you can click edit, select all, and just remove any lingerers in your class. So I always tell my participants, hey, in the last 1 to 2 minutes of your class period, if you teach multiple class periods, go here, kick all those students out before your next class period comes in. Oh, awesome. Lisa, they love that the dashboard can be in French. Oh, I love that too. Okay, once you have left my class, go ahead and close out of that tab altogether. So you want to open up a whole brand new tab. So once you open up a brand new tab or a brand new browser, go ahead and go to your Google Drive. Your school Google Drive is where we're going to be going now. Okay, once you're in your Google Drive, there's two different ways that you can get to Lumio from your drive. The first is you can click New, go all the way down to More, and in the sub-menu, you'll notice at the bottom that Lumio is an option. Now, if you click that and you don't see Lumio, you can also click Connect More Apps and pull up Lumio that way, and it'll save it there. Additionally, if you're a Waffle Bar user, you can click the Google Apps in the right-hand corner. And if you scroll all the way down to the bottom on those Google Apps, Lumio is likely that last one right there for you. So go to the Waffle Bar or click New, More, and then Lumio. And it's going to go ahead and bring you to a page like this once it loads. And you're going to be doing teacher sign in. So once you click teacher sign in, a box is going to pop up where you're going to choose your account. And this will look very similar on the student's end as well. When they go to the student sign in, they'll be prompted to choose their Google account as well. And Will mentioned this earlier that Lumio and the Google integration have been reviewed and added to the privacy review, so it is good to use in your district. It fulfills all those privacy requirements. And then you'll come to the Lumio dashboard. And if it's your first time using Lumio, you might need to answer a few questions, such as your name, if you're an adult or a minor, etc. So you can take a few moments to answer those questions. I'm going to pause here for about 30 seconds. Let me know in the chat if anyone's running into any difficulties. Okay. Now, once we're on our Lumio dashboard, you'll see that there's My Library. So these are all of the things that you have created or saved to be used. And so you'll know you're in My Library because it'll have your name at the top. And when you scroll over any of these files here, it says Start or Edit. And so you can start a lesson automatically whenever you're ready to go ahead and start it for your kids. Or you can go here and you can hit edit if you want to edit or adjust or change anything. Now, the reason why I bring this up is because in My Library, that's all your stuff. But notice there's also a tab up here called the Lumio Library. It is amazing because our Lumio library has hundreds, hundreds of pre-made lessons and activities that have all been made by teachers, current teachers in the classroom. And so you can scroll through here and look at the different collections we have in the Lumio library. And notice every one of these collections has a See More button. There's a lot of activities. And you might scroll until you find something that fits your content. Or if you have a specific topic that you want to search for at the top, that's always an option. Now, once you find something that you like, maybe I'm doing equations with variables. When I select it, I can look at a preview of the activity or lesson. My Wi-Fi wants to catch up with us. There we go. I can look at a little preview of what I have in here. And if there's anything I like in here, I'm going to click Save to my library. Now, even if there's something you don't like, maybe you don't need all of these examples, or maybe you want to change the text or the background, that's totally doable. Go ahead and save it to your library anyway, because remember, once it's saved to your library and you go back to My Library at the top, when you scroll over anything that you've added, you can edit it. So if there is something that you like, save it and you can edit it and adjust it to be whatever you need to for your class. There are so many great collaborations in here as well. So if I scroll down here, we've got a collaboration with Tinker in here. We have a collaboration with Epic and ReadWorks. So a lot of this is actually research-based activities and flows. Got the In the Footsteps for our history. We have partnered with Flat for both our music, and then we also have some really great art files. So a lot of really great options down here. Now I'm going to go back to my library for a moment and take a peek at my chat for some questions. Yeah, John says, can you post Lumio decks on Classroom? Yes, you can. So when I'm in my library, right, and here's all of my presentations here. When I scroll over it, I've got that start and the edit. But these three dots in the bottom right-hand corner, that's our More menu. And every single file has its own More menu. And so when I click that, I can edit, rename, or look, there's that share link. So when I click share link, I can give another teacher a copy of my lesson and that'll download a teacher copy. Or I can let students access this lesson and work at their own pace. So if there's something I want my students to review outside of class or do for homework, I can copy this here and drop it as an assignment in Google Classroom. So yeah, definitely an option there. Now, when I go back to these three dots, look, there's also an export as PDF. So if you've made a Lumio file and a student needs a hard copy for an accommodation, you can export it as a PDF and print it off. You can make a copy if you have multiple classes. If you have multiple class periods that you want to divide, you can make different copies and so on. Okay, Rebecca, I can only see one of my resources, not everything. Don't know what's going on with your view there, Rebecca, so I encourage you to submit a tech ticket, an orbit request, or an orbit ticket, I think is what it's called. No, John said, would this impact their progress if they previously completed the activity? So yeah, let me tell you the difference between the synchronous and asynchronous. To answer you, John, no, it will not impact their progress. But I want to show other folks what this might look like. So after I've created a lesson, and look, you can create a lesson by clicking this new button, or You can import material you already have. So that's how you'd start to create your lessons, these two buttons here. And then once you've created your lesson and it shows up here, notice that there is this class ID in the top right-hand corner. When I hover over it, it's blue. So this is the button I'm going to click to connect students to my live lesson. Like if I'm standing up in front of students and I want them to be with me in the moment, I'll click this and it shows me how to get students connected to my live lesson. So they can go to this link, they can follow this QR code, or they can go to Hello Smart and enter my class ID. So once those students have joined, I'll then go and hit start on whatever assignment that I want or whatever presentation I want to be presenting live in class. Let's say we get through about half of this presentation in class. My students are working, we get through half. Then once that lesson is over, I'm going to go to the same exact file and I'm going to hit these 3 lines and hit share link and grab that student share link. Then when students click this link, they're going to pick up where they left off in class. So this link in the top right-hand corner will get students connected for a live lesson, whereas this link with the 3 dots is going to give students the homework or the option to review or work on their own. Okay. Oh, good question. Rebecca says, if I import and modify files in Lumio, does it alter the copy in Google Drive? The answer is no. When you import it into Lumio, you're going to be working on the Lumio version there. So any extra things that you add and anything like that will save in the Lumio, but will not impact the original Google slide or the original Google Drive item. You'd have to go back to that item in Google Drive and actually make the forever edits there. Great question. Okay, the last thing that I want to show you is just quickly how you might make some of these files and activities. So when I click this new button, it's going to open up my Lumio toolkit. And this is basically asking me, hey, Sarah, what do you want me to add? Do you want me to import something that you already have? Do you want me to add a YouTube video? Or do you want me to add a game? Because remember, all of those different media types are supported. So it's asking me what it wants me to add. And I'm going to start with YouTube because we had some questions about that. So when I select YouTube here, it opens up YouTube within my Lumio. And so if there's a specific topic that I want to include, I can go ahead and search for it directly in here. I can preview any of these videos by clicking this little red icon here, and it'll give me a preview. And here we go. Playback on other websites has been disabled by the video owner. This tells me that I need to watch it on YouTube. And so that kind of answers some of those questions that you had earlier. It'll tell you which videos have that feature. But I can always click that link and open it up here in another tab if I need to. The majority of our, and there was a number rock too, that's perfect. The majority of our videos though, when you go to click on them, they don't have that same copyrighted or those same restrictions on it. And so when I click the preview, it tells me this one's good to go. I can select it and hit add. So I am glad you asked that question about number rock because that's something that was new to me. But let's see what happens if I did add a number rock. Let's say I didn't preview it and I mistakenly added it. I click add here. And I wait. It still tells me the video is unavailable. And even when I go into my full presentation mode, it'll tell me the video is unavailable. But it does give me this really helpful link to, again, try to lessen that transition time whenever you run into instances like that. So in something like this, I might have to tap that there and then open it up in a new tab. Another thing about the YouTube video, well, notice when I hit this little plus sign to add more to my Lumio, this same toolkit is going to appear every time because it's saying, Sarah, what do you want me to add next? If I wanted to add another YouTube video, I could go in here and I could also search by a specific URL. So if you have a YouTube video and you have the URL to it, you can paste that in and pull it up that way as well. So that's a quick little tip. Now after my video, I'm going to go to my plus sign here, and this time I might want to look at a game. So I've selected my games right here, and it shows me all of the games here. Now, if you don't know what one of these games does or you don't know how to work it, you can click this little graduation cap. Anytime you see a little graduation cap in Lumio, it's going to show you a quick video and give you a quick guide on how to use that tool. So when I click the graduation show cap on game show, it's going to give me a quick preview of what that game looks like. And then I have the option to learn more down here at the bottom. So if as you're clicking through, you just want to look at what one specific thing does, you do have that option. Once you choose your game or whatever you're building in Lumio, it's always going to take you through a wizard. So I've selected my game. Might have to select it again. And it's going to bring me through a little box where I answer a few questions, and then Lumio's going to do the rest for me. So once I put in my content, adding in the content for my game, I can add text or images. Lumio's going to do all the coding and all of the background work and actually make that game and build it in the background in less than 30 seconds. So it's a really quick tool for you, and I encourage you to click that graduation cap if you need to. Now, the last thing I'll mention is when you hit those plus sign is we have a lot of those pre-made graphic organizers. If you want to do a whole class poll or quiz, you've got all of those options. And as you're going through, notice there are these little graduation caps all the way through Lumio. So if you need to review, click that cap and it'll show you how to use that tool. I am at my time limit. Our hour went by really quickly, so I want to go ahead and respect people's time who do need to jump. I want to say thank you so much. I'm going to drop in my email in the chat, and I'll hang back for a minute if you do want to stay and ask me a few questions. But thank you, and I really hope you all have a fantastic day. Oops, made that typo. Let me try that again. Thank you all so much.